as I promised, I would be bringing in expert guest speakers who would be able to better advise you guys on most of the questions that are asked. So I am very proud and very happy to have Professor Steven Del Grosso with me today on my channel. So Professor Del Grosso taught me project management, and as you all know, I'm a senior project manager. So he's actually one of my favorite professors. So it feels so amazing that he's like, I mean, it honestly feels surreal that he's actually on my channel today. So I mean, instead of me going about it, like I would actually give it over to you, Professor. So please go ahead and like introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, and it's an honor to be here on your channel. It's
Thank
wonderful. So I've been teaching at North Carolina State University for many years, actually, in the management school and in the engineering school. My career was mostly in the information technology area. I worked many years for IBM, International Business Machines. I started as an industrial engineer, which was my undergraduate degree, and worked in manufacturing, software development, hardware development, and I finished my career primarily in the field of project management. And I was the director of IBM's Project Management Center of Excellence. But it's really good to be here teaching students now and sharing what I can from my experiences.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I feel like, okay, I mean, you have like 40 plus years of experience with IBM, and then now it's been like quite a few years since you've been academia. So on the basis of that, I've always been curious to know, like, and a lot of students have asked this, like, what are some like top mistakes that students often make, like when they're like trying to, you know, go out there to get a job? So what are some most common mistakes that you would say students are making?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think one of the most common mistakes when looking for a position is not being familiar enough with the company and its business.
Yeah.
It's really important so that you can have good conversations with whoever you're interviewing with to understand what their business is and what value you can bring to the business. So that's one of the primary mistakes. I think some of the other obvious ones are the resume that you present must look good as well as have good content, obviously no mistakes and things like that. And then I think we tend to, in interviews especially, not ask enough questions from our standpoint. Because as a person interviewing for a job, by asking questions, you're showing that you know enough about the business to ask intelligent questions, or at least know enough about the job that you're interviewing for as well.
Yeah, wow, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
So you were talking about resumes. So as somebody, so 40 years in your company is like a long time. So I'm sure like you must have seen like thousands of candidates who were successful, unsuccessful.
Yeah.
So on the basis of that experience, like please tell me, like if you're looking at a resume, what are some most common errors where someone is like a straight up reject? Like, you know, like they usually say that, like, you know, you can find out within 30 to 40 seconds if this resume is worth it or not. So for you, like, what are those red flags that make a resume a straight up reject?
Yeah, so the first one in general is if there are grammar or spelling errors in the resume. I mean, that sounds silly, but it's very important.
It is.
It tells me the person applying didn't have enough conscientiousness to really make sure that was correct.
Yeah.
The other thing I would do is if I'm interviewing for a specific job, I make sure that they have the relevant experience, job experience, or subject field experience. That could be an immediate rejection as well. But going further than that, what I'm most interested in is the words that they put underneath their experience explanations, because you can tell by the projects that they worked on and how they express the detail in those projects. In just that short amount of space, you can tell how much they know in that field or how well they express themselves.
So that description, like how they've really phrased it.
It's very important.
Okay, because I was reading about it somewhere that like oftentimes like for recruiters it's really easy to point out when someone has just written like a lot of fancy language, because like oftentimes these days the buzzword culture has really made it difficult, you know, like people just throw in a lot of buzzwords and because they want to be picked by the algorithm essentially in the first screening round. But I mean I'm pretty sure like when the human intervention really comes in, you can differentiate between like a good and a bad resume.
Yeah, that's right. That's why I like to see a lot of words underneath those projects or those assignments, because that gives us information that we can exchange and talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about what are the things to avoid essentially, but like let's talk about like what are some impressive things that you're looking out in a person? Like if you're interviewing somebody or if you're looking at a resume, what would you recommend somebody definitely does?
Well, of course, calling out specific skills is very important.
Yeah.
Because even if those skills don't relate directly to the particular job, they may be important. Like, for example, you might have experience with some piece of software, and that turns out to be a unique kind of experience that other people don't have.
Yeah.
Because what you're trying to do with your resume is separate yourself out from the rest of the crowd.
Definitely.
So if you have some of those unique skills or system things that you've worked on, my eye is attracted to those kind of things.
Okay, no, that's interesting. So just like dwelling a little further on this, a lot of my viewers are actually based in India, and essentially when making a move from another country to the United States, they often struggle with this thing that they don't have like relevant work ex to show within the country.
Mm-hmm.
So what would your recommendation be to those people, like that you don't have anything here, no work ex to show, and given the current economic situation, like how can they like make sure they get interview calls, and like what can they do?
So you mean they don't have any relevant experience in that particular country that they're trying to get a job? Well, and other people may have a different view on this, but since my responsibilities were mostly global in nature.
Yeah, I know, because of which you're such an excellent person to like answer this.
So I would not get too hung up on a person not having experience within the United States, but I would want to know if they worked with people that were resident in the United States. So in other words, did they participate in a global team in some way?
Yeah.
Because actually you and I were just talking about this, there's certain nuances about handling daily responsibilities when you're talking about working in a different country or in multiple countries that you need to be aware of. So I wouldn't be too concerned if someone, say from India, had never worked in the US, but I would like to see that they had some collaboration with the US team.
Okay, so what you're really trying to say here is that somebody should be able to demonstrate that they can work well with global teams and they have experience in like talking to people from other countries and communicating with them essentially.
Exactly, and it's mostly the communication thing that you want to worry about because different cultures have different ways to approach
talk
things.
Yeah.
And if you don't at least have the sensitivity to that, it's difficult to continue.
Of course, like that makes sense. And I've got a couple of questions where students at the moment are not in the project management field.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a lot of my questions are actually both project and product management. Oftentimes, I think the students really think of them as one branch, which it's not.
Right.
But still, like a lot of questions are around this, that like if you don't have like previous PM experience, how can you kickstart your career as a project manager? Or in other words, like what are some skills, some certifications, some things that they can work on that they end up as a project manager in their degree, like in their...
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned certifications because when I was thinking about that particular area, I think a way to really enhance your resume to show that you've got some understanding of project management is to get some of the readily available certifications that are out there. So for example, the Project Management Institute has a certification that's called CAPM, Certified Associate in Project Management, that requires no working experience. You only need to have a familiarity with the concepts and terminology of project management.
So anybody who has just graduated or is still an undergrad, they can take a CAPM?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just a knowledge demonstration that you understand the body of knowledge from a terminology standpoint.
Okay.
However, if I was hiring for project managers that did not have work experience, if one candidate had a certification that was applicable and another didn't, I would obviously look at that one that had the certification.
Okay, I think that's a really useful advice. So like for those of you who have been asking me, how can you get into project management? I think this is a great start.
And I think if you're specifically looking for project management jobs in the technology field, having agile development certifications are good as well. So certified Scrum Master, if you know that term, and a certified product owner. These are all certifications that you can get with minimal experience, or actually from a Scrum Master standpoint, not too much applicable experience, but they're very valuable.
Okay, no, I think this is like a great advice.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you were also associated with the Project Management Institution, the PMI.
Yes.
So if you could talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people are interested in project management, but they don't quite know how important PMI is?
Okay, so PMI is the Project Management Institute. It's the largest global association for professional project managers.
Yeah.
But it also has information that everyone can use, including students. And so they do have student memberships, which cost roughly $35 US, but by joining the organization at a student level, you get access to all the different standards and products that PMI offers. They also sponsor many different certifications. We already talked about the CAPM certification, eventually leading up to the one that does require experience, which is the Project Management Professional. But they support students, they support experienced project managers, and they provide lots of services and material that people can use. More importantly, I think, is they have a system of local chapters that usually meet fairly regularly, could be monthly, could be every other month, that you get to network with other project management professionals and other executives in local businesses to make the important kind of connections that we would need if we are looking for a job.
And connections are really important.
Absolutely.
I had only heard about it as a theoretical concept until now, even though I was always focused on building a strong LinkedIn connection and stuff, but it was really connections that helped me land this job in an economy where it's really hard to land one. So I think this was a very valuable advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
But any final closing thoughts for students as a global leader? So any thoughts for the students who are planning to, essentially come into a new country and in a new culture with everything new around them? So what would your final words be to them? Like, how do they kickstart a new journey successfully?
So, the most important thing for me after being in global business for over 30 years, certainly, there's so much that other cultures and people from other cultures can bring to your business. And I think people in the US have grown over the last 15 to 20 years to actually appreciate that diversity. So I think it's a strength, first of all, because you're bringing another point of view, another experience set to the table. And I think the best advice I could give someone who's trying to land a job, say in the US, is just be yourself, talk about your actual experiences, and always stress the kind of stories that other people might find interesting based on what you've experienced.
Okay, so storytelling is something that they should focus on.
Very important.
Yeah, I really think this is a very important advice, because I've sort of seen this myself in corporate, that what really differentiates you. So I think if 10 people have the same skill sets, then I really feel what's the differentiating factor there is, like, how do you communicate yourself? How do you explain how a certain incident happened, or how you tackled a certain situation?
Right, it adds color to yourself. It gives you the background of where did I get my experience from.
Like, and experience, I think, is really important. Like,
it
shows, like, I think it shows everything. It shows a lot of richness in your character. It shows, I don't know, strength a lot of times, that you were capable of, like, handling this situation on your own.
Right, and to that point, and it may be somewhat of a cliche, but talking about a failure is actually a good thing, and what you've learned from a failure. Don't ever be afraid to talk about something that didn't necessarily go perfectly.
Yeah, that's again a very valuable advice, guys, that, like, don't refrain from talking about something that did not go well, because I don't think any company out there is looking for perfectionists. They're looking for people who can, I think, still go on even after something does go wrong.
That's right. Adaptability, resilience, all the words that we know now are really important in how a person handles situations.
Yeah. But I think this was really amazing. I loved shooting this video with you. It still feels like such an honor to have you next to me and doing this video.
Well, it's an honor to be part of this broadcast.
No, thank you so much. Like, and I mean it, guys. Like, he is such an amazing person. He has had so much of impact on me as a professor and as a mentor. So thank you so much again for gracing Arushi's world today with your presence. And
Thank you, Arushi.
Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
Bye.